Good evening, everybody. This is the January 10th, 2023 meeting of the Mansfield Conservation Commission on January 10th, our non-regular time. First, we'll just do a roll call of the members that are in attendance. I'm Michael Soares, Chair of the CONCOM. Also have our Secretary, Chad Rittenhouse, and members Aaron King, Miranda Davis, Will Ouimet. Not present are John Silender, Meg Harper, and James Knighton. Is it Knighton or Knight?
Knighton.
Knighton? Okay. All right, thanks. So James is our alternate, right? So we'll all be voting members tonight. We can go into item 2A, our minutes. Does anybody have any revisions or comments on the minutes as written? I can get a motion to accept.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Thank you. That was Chad moving and Will seconding. Item 3, is there, oh, let's vote. That would be nice. Is anybody opposed to accepting the minutes as written? Otherwise, I'll just assume it's a unanimous vote. Okay, everybody is in favor. Okay, so that motion passes unanimously. Item 3, is anybody here here to speak just in general as under public comment?
If they are, maybe someone could raise their hand. It seems to be everyone is with the, or turn your camera on. I think everyone is with an applicant.
Yeah, seems like that. Okay. Okay, great. Item 4A, conservation easement monitoring. We did have a visit kind of tentatively scheduled for December. It was a busy time. We weren't able to pull together the materials to do that. Are we still interested? Oh, acknowledge James is here. Hey, James. How are you? Do we still want to try to schedule an easement monitoring this month, or Jen, do you think we should just kind of wait on it for a little bit?
If we could wait till we until we fill my former position, I'd be very grateful.
Okay.
So, yeah, thank you.
So, okay, that sounds great. Okay, so we can go to our new business, item 5A. This is application W1613-2, CMC Stores SPV LLC, for a permit to conduct regulated activities associated with a proposed excuse me, I hit my cursor. A proposed multi-family residential community at 497 Middle Turnpike, and 4 parcels fronting on Cedar Swamp Road. Just sort of, we're all pretty familiar with remote meetings. If you could just introduce yourself when you're speaking, I would say that would be good for commissioners as well, just so people who are listening in know who's commenting or asking a question. I'll try and do that. I forget as well. And do we have somebody here for the applicant who would like to start things off?
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and commission members. My name is Joe Williams. I'm a land use and environmental attorney with Shipman and Goodwin. Our office is at 1 Constitution Plaza in Hartford, and I'm glad to be here this evening representing CMC Stores SPV LLC on this application. After a brief introduction by me, you will hear from Tim O'Neill from Langen, who prepared these wonderful slides and is one of our excellent civil engineers on this project. And then Jim McManus, our soil scientist and wetlands expert, will talk about his evaluation of wetlands and natural resources on the site and how the design avoids impacting them. My clients are also in the meeting, as well as Kate Throckmorton, who's our landscape architect and prepared the planting and wetland buffer enhancement plan. And she's available to answer questions about that plan as well. So you have before you our application for inland wetlands approval. And of course, we will be demonstrating to the Inland Wetlands Agency that the proposed plan will have no adverse effects on inland wetlands or watercourses or their functions and values. But from a broader conservation perspective for this commission, I wanted to let you know that my client and this top flight team of consultants that it has put together feels very positively about this proposal and is excited to bring it forward because we believe it offers much needed housing options on the site, including multifamily, affordable, and market rate housing options that the town has planned for at this site, and applies a design that advances the town's plan of conservation and development, complies with its zoning regulations, and respects the natural resources on the site and avoids impacting them. And that's what you'll hear about more tonight. Now, this team has worked on this proposal for quite a while, a few years now, actually. Last year, we had a wetlands application pending, and then we found out that we had to make some changes related to a zoning interpretation regarding where driveways were allowed to be located. So we withdrew the application, revised the design, and in the process of dealing with that issue, also addressed some of the comments that we had received from town staff and the town's consulting engineers with regard to retaining walls that we have on the site, which are intended to keep the development as far away from the wetlands as possible. So you'll hear more about how our team took that opportunity to move the walls and the development even farther away from the wetlands and to reduce the size of the walls to address those concerns from a conservation and wetlands perspective. Now, the plan before you proposes to develop actually less than a quarter of a roughly 64-acre site. It concentrates the activity on the disturbed former golf course portion of the site, which you'll see a little more detail on, includes a few buildings, and there is a cell tower pad as well, along with parking and driveways. So we're just proposing to develop the area of the site that had already been disturbed previously. But the plan preserves undisturbed a substantial area of forested wetland and water courses. And we have carefully designed sedimentation and erosion control plans and stormwater management plans to avoid any indirect impacts to wetlands, while also proposing, as I said, a wetland buffer enhancement plan with quite a few additional native plantings that we believe will actually enhance the functions and values of the wetlands on the site already. So with that introduction, I'd like to turn directly to Tim O'Neill, who will take you through the site and the development proposal.
Okay, great. Thanks, Joe. And as Joe stated, my name is Tim O'Neill with Langen Engineering. I'm a licensed Connecticut professional engineer here on behalf of the applicant, Clear Mountain Capital. And what we're looking at here is just a high-level overview of the project location by itself. The project location is made up of several different parcels, and as Joe had mentioned, totals just about 64 acres in size. Our project is going to be located in the southeasternmost region of the site on just about 15 acres of land, and most of which has previously been developed and is currently developed. You'll see the project location identified is at the intersection of Cedar Swamp and Middle Turnpike, or Route 44, which is located to the south. To the north of the property, we have some residential properties and the Route 195 or Stores Road. To the west, we also have residential properties, and to the east is Cedar Swamp Road, and again, a few additional residential properties. And in this next aerial, you'll see that we've zoomed in and we're kind of focusing on the southern portion of the property because that's where most of our development is going to be. So you'll see we've added in the wetland delineation here, as well as the 150-foot buffer regions on the aerial, so you can see how everything sits as it stands today. The existing 9-hole golf course that you see in the background is vacant as of today. Was formerly developed, so there's a lot of soil disturbance and things on site as it stands, as well as an irrigation man-made pond located directly in the middle of the site, which you can see my pointer is on right now. In support of the vacant golf course is a clubhouse located in the southern central region of the parcel. That's also vacant at this point, and down in the southeasternmost extent, we have an existing vacant restaurant structure. Now, we did withdraw the previous application, and with this new application, we've included a residential property known as 17 Cedar Swamp right up in this corner, which is has allowed us to make a lot of these beneficial changes and reorganize the site plan in a in a manner that addresses some of the previous comments that we had received from the town and the peer reviewer. Sorry, one sec, let me just save that. Okay. All right, so there are a few images that we've included that represent the site. You can see in the upper left-hand corner, we have the existing vacant clubhouse. In the center upper row, we have the existing vacant restaurant. In the upper right-hand corner, the existing cell tower, which is actually to remain in the proposed condition. Bottom left is the inlet to the man-made pond, and the bottom center is the existing man-made pond with the outlet structure. Now, the outlet structure from the man-made pond, as it stands under today's condition, has some erosion issues. You can kind of see the ridge line here with the pond, and then there's an inlet pipe here that eventually collects water and sends it down and underneath an existing fairway. And if we move over to the bottom right-hand image, you can see an image of that fairway with the existing man-made pond to the right of the image. This outlet pipe goes below the fairway and discharges to an existing channel that makes its way down to the in the western direction of the site to a major wetland system along our western boundaries. And as part of our application, the man-made pond will remain, and the access road connecting our southern development to our northern development will run right up and down this fairway here. So you can see this site under existing condition is largely disturbed, and our proposed development will remain mostly within those limits. And this slide is depicting the sensitive areas, wetlands, the 150-foot buffer setback, upland review area, and the property line setbacks. You'll also notice that there are a few FEMA flood zones that are located off-site in the eastern direction. The site actually has a pretty significant change in elevation from about elevation 600 on the eastern side down to about elevation 500 on existing watersheds follow that direction. So most of our water is heading down to this western wetland system on the extent of our further once we get into the wetlands report. But I did want to bring up our proposed development, which is displayed in black in the background here. And you can really see how we've planned out this layout to work around the wetland systems while remaining outside of the 150-foot upland review areas as much as possible. The vast majority of our impacts will be within the upland review. There's only a very small direct wetland impact area, and that's directly at the man-made pond outlet structure and proposed connecting access road that we discussed previously. And that is located right here. So the reason that we have those direct wetland impacts is because we are going to rework that eroded outlet structure from the man-made pond so that it's a higher functioning and maintains a healthier water level in the pond so that the ecosystem can function at a higher level. That outlet control structure is discharging over a preformed scour hole on the other side of the proposed access road. That preformed scour hole is going to solve some of the erosion issues that we're seeing on site today. You can see that the finger of that western wetland that extends up towards the crossing is an existing channel. And right at the outlet from the existing 12-inch pipe, we've noticed a little bit of erosion. So we've designed a riprap scour hole to dissipate velocities and spread them out as they continue down the road. So that should be an improvement for that area there. And those are only direct impacts to the wetlands on site. And then moving into our colorized site plan, this gives you a representation of what we intend to build with this application here. The current zone of the lot is a rural agricultural residential 90 zone, or RAR 90, and we have a proposed zone change to a design multiple residential zone, or a DMZ. And we are proposing 256 apartment units across 11 main buildings scattered throughout the site, and includes a townhouse down by the main entrance to the site. So the site is accessed by Route 44 Down to the south, there's also an emergency and maintenance access that's located in the northeastern region of the proposed development. That is actually a gravel drive that extends up to Cedar Swamp Road. We're trying to limit all of the impacts to that region of the site, so we can let it remain natural, like we're leaving the northern 30 acres of the site in a natural condition and the western wetland region untouched. The maintenance access, where it ends over right around here, where I've drawn that areas where the existing to remain cell phone tower is. And currently there's a utility conduit and easement that runs through the site and connects to Route 44 that will be relocated underneath the emergency and maintenance access path up to Cedar Swamp Road and remain in operation under the proposed conditions there. And if we move on to the next site, Joe had mentioned that we had previously submitted this application back in September of 2021. And this site here just kind of compares some of the differences that we've seen from the previous application to the new one. In magenta, you'll see what our previous application proposed, and in black or default in blue, you'll see what our current application proposes. So I had mentioned earlier that we've acquired the 17 Cedar Swamp property, which would be this region over here. So we were able to reconfigure the site circulation and layout to help us pull away from some of the higher functioning wetlands on site and make sure that we're providing setbacks and lower wall heights that were requested by the town and peer review inputs. So if I'm starting up in the northwestern region, you can see that we are increasing our setback distance from the wetlands by roughly 30 feet in the upper corner, and we increased that to about an additional 130-foot setback from hardscape in the proposed condition in the new application. And those setbacks continue as you move down the site here. Again, we're seeing about a 14-foot improvement for setbacks from the wetlands here. And when we're looking at wall heights, our previous application had walls that were up to 40 feet tall in the northern section. The maximum height in the proposed condition is about 20 feet. And along the southwestern region of our previously proposed application, we were reaching heights of about 20 feet. In our new application, we have reduced those to about 13 feet tall. So I think we've significantly improved and responded to the previous comments that we've collected from the last application. And we have also prepared a stormwater management and conveyance system in support of the proposed site plan and project. This is a very robust stormwater management plan. Our main source of water quality treatment is through infiltration, and we have 4 separate infiltration features, 2 above ground infiltration basins and 2 below ground. The above ground are highlighted in yellow, the below ground are in dark purple. We also have below ground attenuation systems, which are not intended to infiltrate, but before water enters those systems, they pass through hydrodynamic separators, which removes a significant amount of suspended solids and also treats the water. So in cases where receiving almost twice what the required water quality volume treatment is. We're also attenuating flows for all the storms to reduce in the proposed conditions for each analyzed storm event. And to avoid point discharge locations, we've included level spreader designs rather than point discharged everywhere that we were able to accommodate them. So water will actually bubble up into a trough-like structure, evenly raise, and then overtop into the wetland at a very low flow and low depth rate throughout these storm events. We have submitted the application, and we have received 2 rounds of peer review comments now. And our latest peer review comment response letter, there were a few minor things that still remain to be adjusted, but can easily be accommodated into the plan. So we're heading strongly in the correct direction, and we expect to have those fully satisfied very soon. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jim McManus to discuss some of the details of the wetland report.
Good evening, good evening all. My name is Jim McManus. I'm a certified professional soil scientist with JMM Wetland Consulting Services with offices out of Newtown, Connecticut. I conducted soil-based wetland delineations back in December. I started in December of 2018. And then I went back in February and July of 2019 to finish actually all the wetlands you see on the project. I flagged the wetlands for the entire parcel, even though the northern 30 plus acres is not going to be touched, but I flagged all the wetlands anyways. I'll start with just kind of going through each wetland and sort of give a brief description of what it is. Starting in the southern part near Middle Turnpike, we have what I called my numbered series wetland, which is located right there next to Middle Turnpike. It's a stony wooded swamp that does receive some stormwater runoff from various locations, road, and probably the existing development. The next wetland is I call the B wetland, which is the man-made pond. Again, that was made probably in the 90s. You folks might know better. I mean, if you looked through my report, I have aerial photographs. It was not there in 1965, but it was there in 1995. So sometime between 65 and 95, it was built. And which is, I think, associated with the golf course. I think they use it as an irrigation system to help with summer irrigation for the greens and such. The next wetland is the C wetland, which is just to the east of the pond, which is again a wooded swamp. That wetland, if you remember from the site walk, there's an existing wood footbridge. You can walk over it. That's where that wetland is, and that flows to the pond. And then the pond actually flows to the west down that steep slope to the larger wetland system, which is the A series. That was my A series, which is certainly the largest wetland on our site, and extends beyond the cell tower to the north. That wetland does extend far off to the west too, and as you get off-site, that wetland does have histosols and deep organic soils, very poorly drained. It's essentially a wooded swamp with scrub swamp as you move further into the wetland, and then obviously outside of the site's boundaries, but continue into wetland itself. There are fingers that come into that. Tim kind of discussed one. It comes from the man-made pond. That's an intermittent stream. Another one, if you see the cutout in the northern portion, just north of the cell tower, that's its town-owned land. There's an intermittent water course, a wetland there where he has it circled, discharges into the little drainage swale on a steep slope, and then that heads downhill toward the larger wetland. And then as you go north, those are all wooded swamps. And actually, there's a drainage divide in this property, essentially around the cell tower. So the southern part of the site has its own watershed associated with an intermittent water course, but the northern watershed has associated with a perennial water course. It's unnamed. It's that's all I couldn't find a name, but it has its headwaters, and eventually they will go into the larger wetland in Nelson Brook. One wetland we didn't talk about, which is because there's really no development nearby other than the emergency access road, which is the 1C wetland, which is located kind of easterly of the cell tower and north of the C series wetland. And again, it's very similar to the C series. It's a wooded swamp, seasonally saturated, very stony. And it does extend into the town-owned land. We did look at the function and values, mainly of the southern wetland systems, since we have no proposed development in the northern part. So if you look at my report on page 7, I looked at the numbered series wetlands is the one in the south, the A series, at least the portion that's near the development, the B series, which is the pond, and the C and the portion of the 1C, which is near our development. And no surprise, the A series has the most principal functions. It has a number of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about six or so principal functions. No secret there. Large, very large wooded and scrub swamp with organic soils. The A series, again, is the largest wetland on the site, but also the biggest wetland on the site. The numbered series has, in my opinion, one principal function, which is groundwater discharge, recharge. It's probably flowing today, certainly. And the B and the C didn't have one or no principal function, but of course there are functions there available, but just not in the principal faction. And then the reason why some of these other wetlands, other than the A series wetland, has less principal function values, mainly due to the disturbed nature of the area, including some of the wetlands, post-agricultural uses, residential development nearby, the existing development on the site, which includes the golf course, and also discharge of stormwater runoff from various places. Kind of lowered the value, in my opinion, on those. I won't get much into it, but we do have a very robust mitigation enhancement plan, planting plan for not only the ponded area, the man-made pond, but also other areas in the site where we could to help buffer and enhance the wetlands in that southern portion of the site. That was just a quick synopsis of kind of what the resources look like. I'll certainly be available to ask any questions. I kind of just hit the highlights right now, but we can dive deeper if we needed. Thanks.
Thanks, Jim and Tim, and that's our initial overview, Mr. Chairman. We're happy to answer your questions or discuss anything with you.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. If we could we go ahead?
I did want to mention that you do have Land Tech, Tom Ryder and Andy. Sorry, Andy, I'm going to mispronounce your name, from Land Tech, who did review. They are preparing a peer review for the Inland Wetlands Agency. So I'm not sure if you want to ask questions, and then you can perhaps have Land Tech go over their review and their comments.
Yeah, I mean, that was a question I was going to ask if they were here, just reviewing the latest correspondence and
Yes.
some of the outstanding items still in that correspondence. Well, maybe just since we're talking about it, we can start there. I tend to scan those letters just for places where there's no further comment, or I'm sorry, for the ones where there's not further comment. There does seem to be, and folks from Land Tech can correct me if I'm wrong. It seems like there's some items related to soil. Maybe I'll let you speak to it since I just reviewed it super quick. Is it infiltration testing that there seems to be some consensus trying to be reached?
Sure. For the record, Andy Sumalides, principal and professional engineer with Land Tech. Yes, we did do two reviews of the latest proposal, and as you can see, they are progressing in the right direction and have checked off a lot of no comments. You're right. The one aspect, and they mentioned also, is that they'll be performing some more soil testing to confirm their findings. They have made adjustments on the soil testing they did have completed. And we did review some of the, as they mentioned in their presentation, a lot of these, is disturbed areas and disturbed soils. So you are seeing some little weird soil conditions, I would say abnormal, where you have fill packages until you hit naturally occurring soils. And you might see some higher restrictive that isn't necessarily in the naturally occurring soils and more in the fill packages. So they're going to do some additional soil testing to confirm that. They have done some, but they haven't shared that with us yet and on plan and details of it. But it does seem like, you know, after further review, that we don't see an issue with them, basically, is what we're getting at. There is room to make any necessary small adjustments if needed based on that soil testing.
Thanks, Andy. Do you mean room in the vertical soil horizon or room kind of on the surface?
Correct. In some areas, there's rooms horizontally and some vertically. In some, you play with the outlet control structure. So there's ways to modify the rates. The biggest thing is the volume, which, as they mentioned in their presentation, they have more than double. You know, the biggest thing when, you know, abutting water, you know, a natural resource like this is the water quality, not so much the quantity, honestly. So that, as you could see, they're doing a great job of. So it's more the, you know, their detention basins can get larger if needed. That won't have direct impacts or any impacts to the wetland. So yeah, I don't see an issue with them being able to make any further modifications that would, you know, drastically change this proposal.
All right, thank you. Anything else from your review that, well, maybe we'll circle back to that.
Would
Sure.
you want to have Tom Ryder, who's their wetlands
Yeah, Tom
ecologist?
could speak. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, Tom Ryder, ecologist with Land Tech. I visited the sites on December 15th. And then as Andy had said, we had provided 2 reviews, initial comments. The applicants have responded, and then we provided follow-up comments. From my perspective, the site is already disturbed, and they've been able to focus on that. The only, like I said, which they've already discussed, is that there is a direct impact, but that impact already exists, and they're improving it. It's from a man-made pond, and I've reviewed their plans and don't really have any issues with that. The only comments, we did have a couple comments. They've addressed all of them, well, most of them. The only thing that I would bring to your attention is there was in the southern portion of the site, there is a steep slope that they are disturbing in order to put in their development. And we went kind of back and forth on how to minimize that disturbance. And I'm now comfortable where they are. My last set of comments was when they're stabilizing the slope, maybe put in reinforce the ENS controls at the toe. And I had made a recommendation to put in some maybe mid-slope wattles just to reduce the watershed flow. And one of the other comments was to have those areas monitored when they're being restored vegetatively, to make sure that the vegetation is coming in well, and if there's any deficiencies or anything that's not coming in well or not as expected, that they can address it. And those comments, those reports should be directed to you. And then the frequency is kind of spelled out, but that frequency that can then be modified by the town based on season and success rate. So from that perspective, that's really the environmental concern I had. Everything else had been addressed through the comment responses.
Thank you, Tom. Just one more quick question I have, because you touched on it, was they mentioned a wetland planting plan, and I was wondering, has Land Tech had a chance to just evaluate that planting plan and its sort of restoration potential?
Yeah, we like the plan. We had initial comments in there. They had some mowing. We had some mowing questions on it for frequency and season, and they have responded back, and we're satisfied with that. I think the planting plan is appropriate for the site, and I think it'll do well. Kate at ELS always does a good job with plant selection. We don't have any problem with that. So
Okay.
yeah, we've reviewed it and don't have any issues at this point.
Okay, and is the monitoring plan that you mentioned for the whole site or a select area?
Well,
to-
the way I phrased it in my letter is that there are certain areas that are going to be exposed next to wetlands, and then there are certain areas that are steep sloped. And those are the kind of the critical areas. There is one, like I said, as I mentioned, south of the development. I don't have any way to show the area right now, but it's in that southern portion of the, yeah, keep going with it. There you go, that one. And then there is a proposed detention basin up in the western portion of the site that will be kind of disturbed up to a point. And those areas there are the most sensitive, and those are the ones I was focusing on with the monitoring report. But while you're there, yes, other plantings and all that stuff can be included in the annual report. But again, those were the focused areas.
Okay, thanks for clarifying. Does any other commission members have questions at this time? Okay. The things that I'm most interested in for myself are vegetation, as we just talked about, and then the stormwater management. And then I guess as a case study or an example of, concerns about it infiltrating as intended or functioning as intended, is I just noticed the basin that's, I guess, the farthest west. That seems to be, exactly, thank you. That seems to be the most downstream. And I think in the earlier presentation, I'm sorry, I forgot the gentleman's name. I think you described it as kind of receiving water from the other detention systems and then sort of percolating up through that infiltration basin C2A, and then
Right.
it's discharging to the wetland.
So there's two different aspects to this infiltration basin down here. The main attenuation and treatment basin, the infiltration basin highlighted in yellow, is separate from the outlet structure that I was referring to as the level spreader. So the
Okay.
level spreader structure, instead of having a single pipe come out to a single point and discharge into the wetlands, we have, and actually, you know what, it may be better if I pull up the zoom in of this one, just because it's a clearer example. I'm sorry, actually, yeah. Right, so the pond we were just discussing has a very similar situation to this. This one was just a little bit clearer. So this is also a level spreader structure that discharges from the underground system to the right here. So water flows in this direction. And this pipe that you're seeing here is actually a perforated pipe buried in stone itself. And if you look at this in profile view, we're coming down the hill to a depression, to a slight raise, and then off, and the wetland system is down here. So the pipe would be underground, encased in stone, and water would fill at a constant rate until it reaches the lip of the level spreader, which allows it to spread out the flow at a slower rate and, shallower depth over the entire length of this stone item right here, and then down into the wetlands. So it avoids a single point discharge that could potentially over time develop a scouring or erosion effect. So it doesn't have anything to do with the detention or treatment of the water per se. It's more of a channel protection or erosion control feature.
Okay,
long
thanks.
term.
Gotcha. So the basin, the C2-A, because I just noticed, its proximity to the wetland, and then if there is we have a high water table in that wetland, I'm always concerned about, the adequate clearance you need to achieve that infiltration, if that's the intent of this practice.
Yep, it is. This one is an infiltration basin, and we actually just received our final revised infiltration testing from our geotechnical engineer last night, and I spent the morning just kind of going through this stuff, making sure everything was good. So we're ready to incorporate, and we have all of our tests performed in this lower basin. And if you'll notice this one here, this is actually a monitoring well. So we have historic data from this point, and then 2 additional tests, throughout to define our seasonal high groundwater, provide our 3 feet of separation for infiltration, and we're ensuring that we have our clearance over rock and everything is appropriately designed. So we got our definitive results and data to say this is functioning, and we'll be able to work that into the plan and resubmit shortly.
Thanks. And just to confirm, there's no water courses on the property, right? It's just the ponds, the constructed
yeah.
pond and the wetlands.
It's all the wetlands.
There's intermittent channels. I would classify the outlet structure from the pond as an incised water course, intermittent.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So does anybody like to start crafting a motion here, or have any additional comments that Chad can put into our motion?
Looking at the plant list, and for the most part, it looks really good. I guess I think that I mentioned this before, but encourage the use of natives, and it looks like most of them are, except Norway spruce. I guess I'm not about. And,
It's cutting out a little bit on you, Aaron. Sorry.
the Norway spruce just kind of stood out to me as there might be a better native.
Okay, so overall, the species selected in the planting plan look pretty good,
Yeah,
but there's maybe that's
yeah.
something to reconsider, or an option to look for you said for Norway spruce.
Yeah, and then the Pagoda dogwood, I'm not familiar with that species. There's other dogwoods that are native that would be a good replacement. I think flowering dogwoods somewhere.
Okay.
Those are interesting.
Aaron, would you like to put together a motion here? Let's put you on the spot. I don't hear you. I don't know if you're talking or not. I can. That sounded louder. Yeah.
Okay. I guess I'm trying to figure out how to craft this. Oh, and then so encouraging the use or recommending the use of native species for plantings. Some that I might have better substitutes, or the crab apple, the Norway spruce. There's a couple dogwood species that aren't native that I haven't heard of.
Okay.
Where's Chad? Leave that together, Chad.
So I think we can list that, Aaron, under, we typically have a motion and then concerns and or recommendations. And so I'll capture recommending the use of native species for plantings and substitutes for Norway spruce, crab apples, and dogwoods. Is that the complete list of plants? You were cutting out a little bit.
Yeah, there's just a couple, like some of the dogwoods are fine, like flowering dogwood's good, gray dogwood's good. There's just, yeah.
Okay. Well, let's include, as we should, just our general assessment of impacts to wetlands and watercourses. Based on the applicant submitting a prior plan and seeing that they've reduced that footprint and been working with the town to craft a better design, and are still working with Land Tech to make sure there's consensus on any outstanding comments in their correspondence. You know, we have a lot of apartments in town. That's irrelevant, but I would say, you know, as designed, if the ENS are followed, if the stormwater is constructed based on, you know, good data, then I think it's likely that the project is not going to have, you know, significant impacts, you know, on the adjacent wetlands. That said, we've added in the past to our motions that, you know, that it's important that any ongoing discussions with Land Tech need to be resolved before, or, you know, before IWA, that any outstanding items need to be reconciled before, or our recommendation would be that everything can be reconciled before a permit is issued. Chad, we've had language like that. I don't know if we have kind of boilerplate language that we can use, or you have to write it from scratch.
I'm working on it. We got to this point a lot quicker than what we normally do.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah.
That is true.
And Michael?
Yeah, go ahead, Will.
Well, so in some of our thinking about some of our previous lists of concerns, we often do talk about the percentages of, you know, increase the impervious surfaces that's going to be created in as a result of the. I mean, that wasn't presented today, but it's probably in the report somewhere. But if the applicants are here and know those numbers, it may help.
Yeah, thank you, Will. Anybody from the applicant can give us a sense of the area of added impervious surface?
Yes, just give me 1 second. I'm gonna have to open that one up and find it real quick.
Thank you.
And then similarly, Michael, we've talked about the amount of fill that's going to be required to that's going to be put into the impervious upland review area in the yellow, particularly by those large, you know, to buffer those retaining walls too, I think. Or I'm not, they're kind of built near they're built near slopes. So exactly how much fill is required versus sculpting, I'm not entirely sure.
Jennifer, one of the questions in the application, it says quantify the volume of materials being deposited within 150 feet of wetlands. Is that it's a cubic foot number? It doesn't give a
Yes,
unit.
yes.
Okay. So that says 25,500 cubic feet.
Right.
And sorry, this is what I'm showing here. This is the full site, not just within the 150.
Right.
but-
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So sorry, can you guide us, Tim? Where are we looking here? For we're looking.
This is a response to comments from the first round, middle of the site here, or in the middle of the sheet here. And this takes into account the entire development, not just the 150-foot buffer, but this was
Right.
the analysis performed.
Okay, yeah. So the 9,200 is that 25,000 cubic feet roughly?
Well, it's
Correct,
on the
that's-
application, it's actually in cubic yards, not cubic feet. So
So it's 25,000 cubic yards being deposited?
Yes, it's a kind of a tough number to nail down exactly because we are removing and depositing, and there's a lot of earthwork on site. So you'll see the response to this comment, the site has a net import of 9,200, but you know, a fill volume, which means you take it out, put it somewhere else, it's counted as cut and fill would be the 59.6. So if we were to subtract all of the cut volume from the fill volume, that number would balance much more closely within the 150-foot buffer as well.
So there will be quite a bit of, could you talk a little bit about the grading? Maybe that would be helpful, Tim.
Yes, absolutely. We actually had in
Yeah.
colored figure put together in the comment response memo that goes over the site and represents a cut and a fill area.
Yeah.
So if we're looking at this, the center of the site with the magenta, those are our areas of largest cut. And if we look at the cyan, that swings to our largest fill areas. So if you'll notice, all of the areas where we have our retaining walls around the edges, which again are the closest areas to the wetlands and within the 150 buffer zones, those are all significant fill regions. And if you look down at the like the pond, the C2A area, that's also a significant cut region. So we'll be removing from the 150 foot buffer, which is not reflected in the 25,000 figure, and we'll be filling within the 150 foot buffer. And that is what's represented by the application figure.
What is the unit on the cyan with the cyan coloration?
Let's see.
Or how
So
much
our-
is it? What's the scale?
Our greatest area of fill is roughly 23 feet or so in this
Yeah.
region here.
Yeah.
Thank you.